y'all. Welcome to another episode of Coffee with Karl and Kofi. Man, I am excited, man. Wrapping up this book, The Science of Getting Rich. There's so
Yeah.
many amazing concepts in this book. What? There's a lot of takeaways that I had, but I really feel like there's one big theme that I really
hmm
felt, which was like mindset overall. How important it is to be focused on your thoughts, focused on your mindset, which we're going to dive in deeper. But
Yeah.
how are you doing today, Karl? How's life? How's life, man?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing, man. First and foremost, Happy New Year to everybody. I don't know when you're listening to this, but we're 7 days into the new year. I guess this sort of puts the button, or I should say the cherry on top of the first week of 2024. And we were just talking offline, man. I mean, I feel like 2024 is really a season of advancement. If you're anything like Kofi and we started this channel in 2023, this is an opportunity to allow time to continue to carry on the efforts and the initiatives that we've been making towards some of our desires. Desire is power. And I know you and I were just talking about this sort of joyful anticipation, is what I would call it, around what this year could become relative to seeds that we planted in 2023 and how we've been incubating them, right? So I'm doing well, man. I'm doing better than I deserve. Not to sound cliche, but it's because I feel this power burning within me hotter than ever before. And it's ultimately due to operating in this creative space. And this is a lot of what Wallace Wattles talks about in the book. He talks about, to your point about shifting mindset from a competitive approach to more of a creative approach. And
Mhm.
what people I think need to realize, and what we can speak a little bit more about as we wrap this thing up, is like, hey, listen, creativity is not to be rushed. Creativity is to sort of be tapped into in a very natural cadence and flow, knowing that if you focus on making meaningful advancements towards your desires, it's all going to take care of itself. And that takes a huge shift, right?
Yeah.
From thinking I got to go out and make things happen and push. And if I don't hurry fast enough, somebody's going to come in and undercut me and take my dream to, you
Mhm.
know what? I can distill my creative process into meaningful, granular advancements that happen in a very orchestrated fashion that allow me to focus not so much on the end goal, but on who I'm becoming. And that's the beautiful
Mm.
thing of time. That's
Yeah.
how time can serve us. I think so many of us jump in and it's like, oh man, new year, new me. I need to hurry up and become this person. And we sort of bomb our opportunity, right, to improve and to ultimately take hold of what we want, right? We sort of self-sabotage our opportunity. And why I love this book is it focuses on the science. So I really want to get in today to
Yeah.
really breaking down some core principles that I think we can really unpack for people to start to really tap into this creative energy and focus on advancing, which is very, very, very fluid and powerful relative to getting to your goal and your desire.
Man, I love that. I really appreciate the way you put that too, because as you were talking about not being so attached, to that outcome, not be so in that competitive mindset, like we feel like we need something. I was just thinking, like, I kind of liken this to like dating, like say for
Yeah,
example, you go on a date and you're like, man, like I need to, make this person my next partner, or I really want to, take this girl home with me and have an amazing night or whatever it is. And you're so focused on like just the outcome of like that experience, like
yeah,
that energy is really felt like, and even if you don't say it explicitly, it's felt in the things you do, it's felt in the way you perceive, the way you carry your body, all those different ways about like how you are going to show up in that on that date are so present if you're just constantly focused on the outcome. And it's funny because like I think we had done a video. I'm sure this, I hope they don't mind, but this person had commented on one of the things that we had like spoken about. We were talking about like how it's important not to like necessarily focus on like money, like only and solely on money when you're building wealth.
mhm,
And so I thought it was really interesting because we were talking about it and we were like, okay, like, you don't want to just focus solely on money. You want to focus on impact. You want to focus on a lot of other things. And their response was like, no, I know a lot of wealthy people that focus solely on money. And not saying that you can't achieve that thing by like focusing solely on money. You can't achieve wealth without focusing solely there, or you can't achieve, bringing a girl home if you're focusing solely on that. But like you are gonna move differently depending on like where your intentions are. And people
Mhm.
truly feel your intentions. Like if I am talking to someone, I remember like early on when I first started in 2019, and I was like, man, like I'm not making any money. I need to find a way to make money. That was felt in the way that I may, come off to people. Cause I had this like almost this, it was coming from a place of scarcity, or it was coming from a place of lack. I think it's
Right.
such a huge difference when you are able to focus on the input, as you said, and really pay attention to things you're doing, but not be so attached to the outcome of something. And it's almost like having that desire and holding it firm in your mind, but then like not being so uh attached to when it happens or how it happens.
Right, right. So well said. So well said. And I love the analogy of dating. That's one of you and I's favorite topics,
Yeah.
both online and offline. And you know, if you really had a desire to have a woman like you and want to date you, you would take a special sense of awareness and you'd have a certain approach to allowing that woman to see you for who you are, right? Without
Mhm.
overimposing your thoughts, your beliefs on her, right? So what I'm trying to say is like, I personally would work to create a sacred space where we could sort of come into that space together and really start to feel if that energy is enough to propel us along into the next phase of our relationship together, right? Versus over empowering or over dominating my energy on that woman. It can be sort of akin to putting on way too much cologne. Like
Yeah.
cologne's great.
Yeah.
Cologne's great because it puts out a
Yeah.
scent that can be pleasing and that can cause the other party to be invited in. But when used in excess, it can cause the person to go the other way, right? And so, same thing with this concept of money. Like, think of money as a mistress. Think of money as the woman that you want to call in. When pursued in and of itself, it can kind of be a little too intimidating for
Mm.
money if
Mhm.
you think about it. But when looking at money as an equal, or I honestly, I think of myself as the master of money, right?
Yeah.
And when you're the master of something, you hold yourself in a different way. It can actually cause that thing to come in, which I think is really, really important. And I think that's a core differentiator that I would want to make for that person in the audience. Beyond that, for me, it's not about money. It's about knowing that money is really just going to allow me to express the fullest version of myself, but
Yeah.
that in present day, I am enough and I have more than enough. So
Hmm.
this is something that our friend Dan Mangena talks a lot about in some of his teachings, right? It's really sort of changing your spatial relationship to how you actually interact with money. But that's neither here nor there. I think going back to the science of getting rich, one of the things that I really wanted to talk today about are some core principles that I think we
Hmm.
can sort of send the
Yeah.
audience off with that they can begin to actually practice. And I think for a lot of people that listen to us, Kofi, they're probably like us. They're probably in the game of entrepreneurship and
Mhm.
business. And, maybe they're at a place where the business isn't really working or it's not going fast enough. It's not generating enough money. They're starting to have some doubts about whether they're doing the right thing. Maybe they don't even like what they're doing in the business right now. And so it's causing some internal conflict and some internal resistance. And what we know about internal conflict and internal resistance is that that's not the healthiest place or the most advantageous place, if you will, to
Yeah.
create from. So how do we help that person learn some of these techniques to advance towards riches? One of the first things that Waddles talks about is this power of desire. Like how your desire, which is the money or the successful business or more clients, how your desire can actually help you tap into a power to pull you through whatever it is you're going through right now.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people get discouraged and a lot of people self sabotage themselves. And so, if you're a person that identifies with that possibly happening right now, it's imperative that you recognize that the things that you're doing are working, even though they don't feel like they're working.
Yeah.
They're working because they're shaping you, they're molding you. And so, if you can look at the things that you don't want to do right now, and I know that we all have things that we don't want to do, and count that as joy and use that as a shaping or a teaching moment, you can actually pull yourself through with power to ultimately produce what it is you want to do in your business. And that's something that he mentioned that was like a game changer for me because I can think about many times and even currently having to deal with client issues. This is one thing that I really don't like to do in my business. I think of myself as more of like the sales and the marketer versus like the customer success piece. But let's face it, that's all part of that buyer experience, right? And so I can think about client issues coming up and start to like huff and gruff, which again would be sort of a lower energy or a lower frequency of creating from. Or I could shift my mindset, which I've been a lot more intentional about as of late, and say, oh, wow, I get to learn how to become a better fulfiller of a overall experience for my client. And because I focus on that and I lean into that, that now creates a situation where I now have more capacity to do that for future clients. And guess what? Because I now have more capacity, the thing that I was desiring, future clients, they show up. So
Yeah.
that's how this thing works. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's interesting because as you were saying that, I was thinking of this law or rule that I heard, is that, how you do anything is how you do everything in life. So
Yeah.
the same
Yeah.
type of, attention and energy that you may put towards one task, it ultimately, like, that's going to translate into other things that you're doing. So
Right.
it's interesting because I think we all go through periods in our life where we may go through, and you may be here right now listening to this. You may be in a job that you may not necessarily like that much. You may be, taking classes to, get a certain type of certification or something along those lines that you're not particularly enjoying. There may be aspects of your business that aren't that exciting. And it's really easy to do those things half-ass, right? It's really easy to go into it
Yeah.
like, man, like I just don't really want to do this. I'm gonna, put half of my attention towards this, so I'm not gonna put much energy, and really try to excel in this area. And that really leads to like you again, since you're putting less energy into that thing, like when you're doing other things, like your mind is going to be used to the fact that you put in a lower amount of energy here. So it's probably like you are going to be more, um, it's going to be a higher likelihood that you're probably going to do those in other areas. And to
Mhm.
have a mentality towards like, hey, like I'm going to see this as part of the process. Like if I have to like solve a customer problem, it's not just me just solving this customer problem. Like I'm solving this customer problem because ultimately this is going to allow me to build, one of the most impactful practices in the country. And so this isn't just this isolated thing. Like this is part of the journey. Or like I'm
Right.
in this job right now because I'm doing this job and this it may not be the ultimate job I want to do, but this is a stepping stone. If I do this job to the best of my ability and I learn all the skills I can learn, I can now take these skills into the next opportunity that I have. And you really
Yeah.
perform differently when you're like really just trying to go out there and be the best you can be. Um,
Yeah.
and it has such again, like I've realized that like there's been a lot of jobs I had before I started my business that like I was just a hard worker. I just like got in there and I was like, all right, I'm gonna try and do this stuff the fastest. I'm gonna try and learn the most. And I realized that because I did that, not one did I, continue to build habits of excellence in myself. Um, because you're always forming a reputation with the people around you, you also
Yeah.
become someone, that is a hard worker, you become someone that is reliable, you become someone that has all these different traits that are necessary to have more access to opportunities out there.
Mhm.
So it's
Yep. Yep.
important to really, and again, I think it's very hard when we're doing something we may not like, but like having that mentality of like, hey, this thing is like part of the process and let me put my best foot forward
Yes.
brings a whole nother it means changes the outcome. It really does. It changes
Yes.
life.
Yeah. It also levels up advancement relative to belief in oneself
Hmm.
because as you focus on what you just mentioned, you now have an opportunity to convey the impression of advancement, not just to yourself, but to others as a part of this new shift in mindset and your capacity building. Beyond that, it's imperative that as you begin to focus on, what I love what you said, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And as you see those micro adjustments and shifts from maybe how you tidy up where you live to how you take care of a critical task in your business, you now start to operate off of a firmer foundation of conviction that you are an advancing personality, right? And as you advance, you get a bit closer to the opportunities that you desire in their most um, true and pure form. And ultimately, what this has done for me, and I know it's done for you because we're very magnetic, and whenever we talk, I know that you can feel it, and I can feel it. Ultimately, you can start to feel this supportive faith, right? And this book talks a lot about this. You feel this supportive faith that you are getting richer. And what we know, this is just a universal principle, is that that feeling always precedes, right? That feeling always precedes the actual fruition of the dollars coming in. But
Yeah.
it'll be such a strong signal, it'll be undeniable that you will start to have this joyful anticipation and opportunities will come to you. Like that's really how it works. The thing that really gets me so moved and literally like makes me want to like kneel down and praise and joy is ultimately what's happening here. And I recognize that everybody has their own spiritual beliefs and their own spiritual practices and journeys and so on and so forth. But if you believe in God the way that I do, ultimately what this is doing is this is positioning and solidifying you as a person that now is on God's radar. Because at the end of the day, this supportive energy, this comes from God, right? Like we
Yeah.
are all we are all kingdom builders. And as you start to kind of like make these micro adjustments, what you're showing is that you're a person that is passing the small exams and the small tests that are being given to show that you are a worthy builder that can take on more. And as you take on more, it's showing God that you're going to be able to execute. You're going to be able to capitalize on what he needs done in his kingdom. Like he's the ultimate king, right? He creates us as a ruler over a specific assignment. And what I'm trying to convey to every single person that's listening is that these opportunities within your business that you look at as an obstacle or just a pain in the butt or a burden, these are cherished moments for you to not only build capacity, but for you to be the ruler over the current assignment. And as you do that, you get on his radar. And I don't know about you, but anytime in the past where I've been on a lady's radar or I've been on a former boss's radar, I was like so overjoyed, right? It's like, wow, that person recognizes that I am worthy. That person recognizes that there's something of value within me that could really push the needle forward in a meaningful way in their life. And so, what better radar than to be on than the ultimate creator's radar, right? In terms of making myself known as somebody that can be trusted to do more with what I'm given.
Yeah.
And that is a huge driver into this game of the science of getting rich. It is just a huge driver. It's a core principle, and that's why I'm really working to communicate it as
Hmm.
effectively and as clearly as I can, because I think that's honestly, bro, like a real golden nugget, a secret plug in whatever analogy you want to plug in there. That if people begin to become aware of and practice and implement and ultimately hold as wisdom, and we've talked about this in the past, this can really make huge leaps and bounds into their progress going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. I appreciate you mentioning that. And in addition to that piece as well, too, because I love how you mentioned the conviction and how important it is to be very strong in your belief. I also realize like how important in the book he talks about, you know, only like having this idea that like things are going to work out and things are going to be successful and
Right.
letting like negative ideas or beliefs also enter into your mind as well too, like, you know,
Yeah.
and it could be negative beliefs like, oh my gosh, the market is crashing, or oh my gosh, the world is ending, or whatever it is, all these different types of stories and things that are,
Right.
people can become so tied to. And I think this is one that I found that for some reason I've always kind of been done well with. I've always been able to have tunnel vision and kind of I've always been very optimistic. But I find that sometimes people can, struggle with it a bit. Um, and the reason why I find that to be so critical is, let's say you're in business. And yeah, the market may not be doing well, what all of those things are. But if you focus on all those things that are not doing well and that can go wrong, like you are going to be operating from a different part of your brain. Like you're going to be operating from that fight or flight part of your brain where you're just like reacting, you're just scared, you're not going to see opportunities, you're going to be second guessing yourself. And there's no, like, it's very difficult to find success when you're just like in that, you know, again, like
Yeah.
sympathy, state, just like,
Yeah.
fight or flight constantly. Um, and the reason why I feel like it is so important to focus on positive things out there and focus on things that ultimately validate that belief that, your business is going to succeed, you're going to succeed, you're going to build wealth. Um, is because like it really just comes down to the amount of energy and time that we have. Like I could spend my energy and time again worrying, or I could spend my energy and time saying, hey, these are the things that I can control. Like if maybe I'm not getting as many clients right now, all right, that means I got to up the marketing. It's not the market. It's not, I'm not going to be
Yeah.
blaming this external circumstance that I can't control. It really empowers you to say, hey, I'm going to start taking these steps for myself and making
Mhm.
changes. um and you also are able to, in my opinion, have a lot more say over the things that are coming up in your life. Like
Yeah.
I know that, over the last 3, 4 years, there's been a million different reasons that I could have said, that could have led me to fail in business, right? It could have been
Mhm.
COVID, it could have been the markets, all these different things. And
Yeah.
all things happen. But the reality is that like your perspective truly determines your reality. And like, you could also have a perspective that like some of the wealthiest people build a lot of their wealth in times of hardship. That's also
Yep.
a reality as well too. So I think it's so important, especially for our guests and audience, to make sure that they are picking their narrative because we could say both are true at the same time. We could say that, there's a lot of different things going on in the world that aren't too joyous, aren't too positive, but there also are a lot of things that are going on. There's a lot of things that you have control over, like your time that you put into the work you do, the presence that you have in your relationships, the career path that you follow, all these different things you have control over. And
Yep.
you focus on those positive things more, like it's gonna help you support your vision. But frankly, I can't even think of one person that I know that's very successful that just focuses on negative things.
Well, no, I mean,
Yeah,
and I'll kind of wrap up the entire thing here. I mean, ultimately, it's about recognizing that we're not that intelligent. Okay.
yeah.
You know, you mentioned you mentioned you mentioned tunnel vision. Tunnel vision's great, in the context of focusing on a task that you need to finish to advance you, but in and of itself, it's limiting because it's tunnel vision. Like you can't see,
Mhm.
360 around you. And that's where God has been so impactful for me is in recognizing that he is of a greater mind. And so when something appears to not be working or the market is going, against me, or clients or not signing or whatever it might be, when something appears to not be working, perhaps it means that he's allowing those doors to close so that we can build capacity that we need for something greater to come in. And that's exactly why you don't want to allow yourself to subscribe to the narrative of, man, this thing is just terrible. It's bad. It's not working. Because you're in a tunnel. You can't see what's around the bend. And how, if you just continue allowing yourself to flow, focusing on advancement, focusing on how these things are actually propelling you towards something greater, you're going to actually have the ability to hang on to that thing and be available to receive it in its rightful time. Point blank and simple. That's
Hmm.
really it. So
Yeah.
if people will just think about that and be willing to have faith to rest in that, I think they'll find that they can actually operate from more of that creative state of flow, knowing that, it's all good and well. It's all good and well. I'm not going to quit. I just got to focus on finishing my race. And that just means continuing to advance through whatever it is, previous times I would call a terrible or bad day in business. It's just not. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm going to leave the audience with, Kofi, today. And hopefully that provides, not only some critical mindset shifts that people need to be more aware of, but also, a different way of operating and a different core perspective that can instill newfound beliefs that then now guide new actions to propel them to everything and more that they desire.
I love it. I love it. And one last thing that I do want to mention about this book and leave the audience with is, how important it is to, you know, go in this with a full heartedness. Like, don't go into these types of endeavors, kind of half-heartedly. And I say that because I liken, building wealth to becoming like a professional. Um, it is something that is not necessarily easy. It's not something that every single person does. The reality is that, like, very small, relatively small percentage of people, 5% of people actually truly like end up building, long-term wealth. And if you want to become a professional athlete, you're not going to just do it like, you're not going to do it by accident. You're not going to just like, be going to practice, doing everything everyone else is doing, and then suddenly you get a call that you're getting drafted to the Buffalo Bills. Like, it's not this thing that
Right.
just kind of just pops up. Like, you really have to have a lot of conviction and um be doing everything that you can be doing to
Yeah.
make, which does require like a great level of honesty within yourself to admit that desire and then take those
Right.
actions consistently, and doing that for a very long period of time. So
Mhm.
just like with many other things in life, like it does take you can't work around the work. It does take a lot of conviction. It does take a lot of hard work, and like, you know, Karl, like I'm sure you probably started your personal growth journey, many years ago. So
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
it's like it can take time. But when you have that conviction, and you put in the time and the work, you will be amazed
Yeah.
at how life can really turn out. So that's what I want to leave the audience with today.
Yeah. Yeah. And the last thing I'll briefly add to that, I'm so happy you brought that whole piece up, is focus less on the work. I feel like I feel like we're all traumatized by the word work, home
Yeah.
work. It
Yeah.
just is, you know, and so put that aside for a second. And I really urge the audience to think more about who you are becoming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Recognize that when you close your eyes and you think about the man or woman that stands on the other side of this concept called time, where you got to put in this work, which is something that kind of causes people to squirm. Focus on that man or that woman standing right there and how you're able to step into that person. Because again, folks, it's just a very basic principle. Principles are
Hmm.
they're unbroken, right? Like they just are what they are. It's just a principle of life that you don't get to become that person without doing something that causes you to become that person, right? And so this whole concept of time, work, it's all about building the stepping stone and the foundation and the basic elements of who it is you really dream of becoming that's out there. So if you can focus on the fact that it is definitely real for you to become the superhero of your dreams, and all that's in the way of you, becoming that person is just some things that you've got to kind of stack up, some skills that you've got to build. And that at the end of the day, it just takes a little bit of time. Hopefully that creates a little bit more excitement and enthusiasm and joy for the process required to step into that person.
I love it. Man, I'm excited.
Awesome.
I'm even more
Yeah,
excited
brother.
for the next book. This is going to be,
Me too, man. Me too. What we got coming next, Kofi? You want to give him a little hint?
oh yeah, we are, and I feel like this is like one of the perfect, entries after or exits after the science of getting rich. But we're going to be talking about the dip. And so
Mm,
this book, oh my gosh, it's a pretty quick read, so it'll probably only take us an episode or two to really get through it. But in your path of getting rich, I believe this is one of the next things that you have to realize and understand.
yeah,
And that is that
yeah,
you're gonna have dips. And to be able to get through those dips and to know when to continue, know when to stop is such an important piece to be successful
yes.
in your life. So we are super excited to bring that to you guys here soon on the next episode of Coffee with Karl and Kofi.
We appreciate y'all so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next one. Much love.